Welcome to Prepared for Parenthood, the podcast for hopeful, expectant, and new parents with little ones up to age 5. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Duger, a psychotherapist, author, educator, parent coach, and married mother of 2. On this show, we'll discuss everything from the most up-to-date practicals of best supporting your young children, to thriving in relationship as a family, to more surprising topics around the psychology and development of babies from conception through age 5. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. I'm thrilled to have you here today. Welcome back to Prepared for Parenthood. I'm so excited today to have Angie Weber with us. She's a mom of twins, the creator of the Parent Toolbox, and host of the podcast Mom Essentials. Angie helps parents build their own toolboxes with new strategies and approaches to be more proactive with their kids' health, physically, emotionally, and mentally. She's on a mission to help break generational parenting cycles by supporting parents to reduce yelling, feel more confident, and build strong bonds as they raise some really awesome humans. Angie believes that as we change conversations, we can also change generations, which I love. I love that. So welcome, Angie. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on.
Let's dive right into becoming a parent. Becoming a parent is challenging, just having one baby at a time, but you jumped in with 2 at once. And I know that having multiples is becoming more common because of artificial reproductive technology. And so a lot of our listeners might be having multiple, might be expecting 2 or even 3 babies. And so how did you, as a mama, prepare for twins mentally, emotionally, physically, for pregnancy, for birth, for postpartum, for parenting in general?
So many people I hear say, gosh, I always wanted twins. You're so lucky. And I was like, what? I never even knew that it was a possibility. And when we got pregnant, we had a very similar story to many people where we were trying for a while. We tried for about 6 months. Nothing seemed to happen. So I was like, you know what? Let's just take a break. I was working on my career. Summer was coming up and we were only married for about 1.5 years at this time. So I was like, let's just enjoy each other. And a little backstory is that I always prayed when I was little that I would meet my husband at 22. We would get married at 24 and I'd have my first baby at 26. So I'm not really sure why I was so excited to be such an adult, but I did start dating my husband when we were 22 and we got married when I was 24. And then after we decided to stop trying, 4 days after my 26th birthday, I found out that I was pregnant. A little bit of a shock, but exciting. Long story short, about 5 or 7 weeks into my pregnancy, I thought I had a miscarriage. So I was hysterical. Ended up going to the ER. They did all these tests. No one was telling me if I was pregnant or not still. I was definitely thinking I was not, based on some stuff that they were telling me. And they came in and said, hey, do you want to go down and we're going to give you an internal ultrasound? And I was like, okay, should my husband come with? Nope, he can just stay in the room. So I'm like, okay, of course, they're just checking to make sure everything's fine in there, but I'm definitely not pregnant anymore. And I was laying there as she's giving me the ultrasound and she started asking me all these questions. And one of them was, do twins run in your family? And I was immediately upset in my head. I was like, are you kidding me? You are asking me all these questions. Like, you're asking me about twins. I'm not even pregnant anymore. Like, how insensitive are you? Those were all going through my head, thankfully, because I was like, no, I don't think so. And she goes, do you want to see them? And I lost it. Like, in the best way. I was so emotional. And she's, oh my gosh, are you okay? Because I don't think they were communicating to tell her that I didn't know that I was pregnant with twins. So it ended up being a very great day. When we told my family about it, apparently my grandparents on my dad's side said, oh yeah, we have twins on our side. And my grandma on my mom's side is, we have twins on our side. And I was like, you guys, why didn't you make a warning label for me? Because I had no idea this was a possibility. So I was very excited to be pregnant, obviously very worrisome that something was going to happen because that was definitely my biggest fear. But I don't think you can ever prepare really when you're a first-time parent. I know you have your book, which is great conversation, but you still have no idea what you're going into. And so I always say it doesn't matter if you have 1 or 2 or 3, although I give a ton of credit to triplet moms because I got two hands. I got two of everything. Three, I don't really
Mhm.
know how you manage it. But I think it's hard either way. We took a birthing class called the Bradley Method through our doula because I was very strong set on being able to do a natural unmedicated birth. And it was a 12-week course. And I still felt like we weren't prepared. So people who were like, I'm going to the Saturday afternoon class for parenting, I'm like, what? And then you feel okay. Like at the end of our class, my husband and I were like, no, you cannot let us raise babies. We're not ready. But you get thrown into it and you figure it out as you go. And that's all you can really do. And then, of course, there's great experts like yourself who have really great parenting books that can definitely help. But I stayed away from the what to expect when you were expecting because I knew I emotionally and mentally could not handle thinking about the bad parts of the pregnancy and the labor and all of that.
Yeah, for sure, especially the way things started with such a surprise and certainly not expecting twin. Can you share a little bit about what the birth was like? Were the
Yeah.
births too?
So during our process of trying to find a doctor, again, I said that I really wanted to do a natural, unmedicated birth, which when you go tell doctors that, they're not usually on board. So we went through a lot of doctors. I'd go in for I think it was our first appointment, and she was like, okay, so we're going to schedule your C-section. And I was like, no, I don't really want that. No, we're going to schedule it anyways. And just like a lot of things that just didn't feel right inside myself. And so luckily we did find a really great doctor. He was about 45 minutes away though. So you can imagine that freaked some of our family out thinking I was going to have these twins on a bridge or something on our way to the hospital. And he was really great. I really loved him. He ended up leaving at about 33 weeks when I was
Oh,
pregnant, the hospital. And I felt really scared because I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what we're gonna do now." We saw the other doctors at that specific hospital and very much again not really listening to us, manipulating the conversation, saying, "We're gonna give you an epidural." And I'd say, "No, I don't want that. No, we're gonna give it to you anyways. Your doula can't be in the OR, but we paid for her to be in the OR." No, sorry, that's not how it's gonna go. And so it just felt very much no one was listening to us. And I do want to put the caveat in there. Of course, they're professionals. They've seen a lot of births, they've done a lot of things, but also understanding your own body and being an advocate for yourself is so super important. And so we ended up finding a doctor who was great, and he was the one who delivered our babies. He definitely said when I first saw him, "You're going to be asking me to induce you at 38 weeks." And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm going to wait till these babies are ready to come." And it was about almost 39 weeks. And I went in and I had a pups rash, which only can be relieved by having the kids. And so I said, "Yep, I'm ready. Let's go get induced." So we went in on a Monday evening, which is so funny because my husband and I, we went out for what we called our last supper. So it was going to be our last dinner together before we welcome these babies and created a new normal for us. And we were running a little bit late. My husband's, "It's fine. It's not like they're standing there waiting for us." We walk into the hospital and they're instantly, "You must be the Webers. We've been waiting for you."
oh,
So we got in, they induced me. The first thing didn't work. They started Pitocin the next day, which was awful. I couldn't keep anything down. But being able to not have any of the epidural or any other drugs was really great for me in my situation. But my husband, bless his heart, was running back and forth. We were using a lot of essential oils to keep me calm. So he was running back and forth, filling up the diffuser. We had nurses stopping in who weren't even working with us, being like, "Hey, we're not working with you, but we heard that your room smelled really good. So everyone keeps saying to come over and just check it out." And I'm like, "Great, welcome to the show," while I'm puking and not being able to control anything. And so I think I was in labor that full day. And then I went into the OR about 10 o'clock that night. Thankfully, my doctor got called away on an emergency C-section. So then again, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what are we going to do if he's not back?" But he came back just in time. And I pushed for a couple hours and everyone kept saying, "Oh my gosh, your babies are going to be born on different days." And I said, "Oh no, they are not. I will close these legs. That is not happening." And so my son came at 12:07 in the morning. And then my daughter, who I think just really enjoyed her own space in there, came at 1:17. So they were 70 minutes apart, which was quite long for a twin birth. Um, and there they were. And thankfully, they, were mostly healthy. I had a really hard recovery, though. I had lost a lot of blood during the labor. I remember being in the room with them and not even being able to stay awake. Like they would come in and be like, "Hey, we're going to, draw your blood or do this to you or whatnot." And I would fall asleep between them telling me that and then poking me with the needle. And so I was very out of it. They had to come in and check on my daughter because she also came out breech too. So they had to make sure everything was okay with her, which just, of course, that's like the child she is. I should have known what being a younger kid was going to be like with her. And they decided and said, we need to take her down to the NICU because I think her blood sugar wasn't being regulated or her temperature. And I was like, okay, fine. You're the experts. Like, take her away. And my husband had woken up an hour later and he's like, "Where's Addie?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I already messed up as a mom. I let someone take her and I wasn't supposed to." So the ups and downs, we were in the hospital for about 5 days when they finally let me leave. And once I got into that car, I was like, let's get the heck out of here. I am ready to be home. I'm ready to start our routine with these babies. And I don't want to come back anytime soon.
Mhm. Kudos to you for having them both vaginally. I know, especially a breech baby. I know that a lot of places won't let you do that. So that's
No.
amazing. Good for you. When we were talking earlier, you had mentioned that you didn't have kind of that special bonding moment with your kids after they were each born. Can you share a little bit about what that experience was like and what you wish more moms knew?
Yeah, I really wish that I would have known this, and I hope that moms who are expecting can take this in, and I also hope that moms who have experienced the same thing can give themselves a little bit of grace too, because yes, I was excited for my babies. I remember my husband carrying my son over while I was still pushing, and it was a fine moment, but it wasn't that movie magic moment that we all expect when we have a baby, where it's, oh my gosh, I love you so much. And I have this instant connection with you. Yes, I loved my kid, but I didn't feel that instant connection or bond with them. Now, maybe that was because of all the stuff my body was going through during the labor, but maybe it wasn't. And it took me years to finally say that out loud. Again, like I really enjoyed my kids, I loved them, but I just didn't have that moment where I was like, oh my gosh, you are my everything right now, and that special spark. It wasn't until maybe 2 or 3 years later, I was actually talking to my trainer, and I had mentioned this, and again, it was really hard for me to say it because I thought, "Oh my gosh, this means that I'm a bad mom. It means that maybe there's something wrong with me," and I mentioned it to her, and she goes, "A lot of people have that. They don't have that moment, but no one wants to talk about it because, again, we're in this society that's constantly pushing this message that we need to have that instant bond, and when it doesn't happen, we feel like something's wrong with us. And we need to start normalizing that we all have different emotions and journeys into motherhood. And that might not look like someone else's. And you might not feel that instant connection with them. It doesn't mean you're a bad mom. It doesn't mean you don't love your kids. It's just one of those things that people don't talk about."
And thanks so much for sharing that. I feel like a lot of the parents who come to me are scared to share. I didn't have that. It means my child's not attached to me. It means we'll
Yeah.
never have a great relationship. I'm like, no, all of these things, no matter how or why they happen, they can be repaired over time. And so you're saying just giving yourself that grace and that time to build a strong attachment and bonding connection with your children, I think is so huge. And over time, did that develop for you, and how did it develop?
Yeah, certainly. I was able to spend quite a bit of time with them for maternity leave. I will say, though, at that time, I was helping run a marketing company here in the cities where I live. And my priorities were not necessarily family. Even though I really wanted a family, I really wanted babies, I was also surrounded with a lot of external messages through my career of you have to do more, you have to be more, you have to sell more, you have to make these big accomplishments in order to be valued, in order to feel successful or be seen as successful. I don't want to have regrets, but I do wish I could go back in time and be actually more present with my children during my maternity leave. Because even though I was there physically, I was still taking care of them. I was constantly thinking about work. I was checking in with work. I was asking how clients were, how are sales, how's this going? And I think I really robbed myself of some really precious time. It wasn't until they were 3 years old and we were working from home between Christmas and New Year's, which was not the cool thing to do at the time. It was pre-2020, and I instantly thought, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do with these 2 all week? This is the most time I'm gonna have with them one-on-one since maternity leave." And I don't know how I'm going to get work done because are not going to be okay with me being on my computer and working. They're going to need attention and they want to do stuff. So I tried to really like balance that week of playtime with them, but also getting work done. And that is the week that completely changed my life, I say, because I spent so much time with them and I fell in love with my kids on such a deeper level that I didn't even know existed before. And I was like, oh my gosh, these kids are actually so cool to hang out with and they're so funny and silly. And I don't want to miss out on this anymore. And it really gave me that moment of where are your priorities? Because these two, and they're our only kids, are only going to be this little for so long. And I don't want to miss out on any more of the moments that I already have. And after that week, and a couple other things that were happening in the background as far as like my mental health and my workspace and the atmosphere and things like that. I quit my job after 7 years. And I'm definitely not telling moms that they have to go in and put in their resignation tomorrow. That's not what I'm saying. I was very fortunate that I feel like God planted a seed before I knew I needed one about a year prior. So I was able to leave my full time job and pursue another side passion that had grown into a business. But it was just one of those things that I really decided I want to put family first. And it doesn't matter how many sales that I make at this company or awards that I get, like my priority and my focus is going to be my family and my children moving forward.
That's so beautiful. I love that it, for you, developed over time. Like you're saying, it isn't necessarily an instant connection with your children as they are born. It's not even necessarily an instant connection in the first year. Sometimes it takes a while for people to develop that strong attachment and bonding relationship with their
Hmm.
children. And then you'll find it, you found it when they were 3 and you were home and it was an aha moment for you. And the beautiful thing about having multiples too, I imagine, is twins have a connection in the womb, right? So they already know each other. They've been gestating together and getting to know each other. And they do have a different kind of bond than other siblings sometimes. And so they had those first few years even together bonding with each other. So that's super sweet too, that there were two of them.
Yeah. And they have a built in playmate.
Angie, some studies have shown that in general, twins can have some challenges with cultivating their own identities and also being separated from their twins. Have you noticed either of those things or both of those things with your own children? And if so, how did you navigate those and what's their bond like?
Yeah, they definitely have a really close bond. They're still siblings, so they still bicker and they fight and they disagree. And we've worked really hard with them over the last couple of years, especially as I've built my company to help them be able to communicate when they need space and they need time. Of course, when they were young and they were always with each other, we, out of our friends, were kind of the only ones who had kids that young. Growing up together and having the same experiences, you would think that they're going to be similar and they're going to have difficulties finding their identity. We were really fortunate in the fact that, yes, they had the same experiences, but also understanding they're seeing it from a different lens as well. So it doesn't mean that they're going to perceive it the same way. And so they were very close. They still are again. In kindergarten, we had them in the same class because it was going to be their first full school year of the pandemic. Honestly, I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. I want to try simplify it as much as possible. And that was a worry of mine going into first grade and beyond of, oh my gosh, how is this going to work out now with having different teachers, being in different classes around different friends. And it's worked really well. Both of my kids are very independent. We really encourage their uniqueness. My daughter loves to be in sports and try new things, where my son is more of a solo sport. He wants to do golf and he likes video games and playing with Legos. And we really try to encourage those things. So that's been extremely helpful. Of course, when you have twins and they start getting invited to birthday parties, and at first everyone's invited, and now we're in the territory of one gets invited over the other, which can be really challenging. And it hurts your heart sometimes too, because you don't want to see your kids sad. But really working on them with, oh, this happens. We all have different friends. You'll get invited to some parties that your sibling doesn't get invited to. So we really try to acknowledge their feelings and help them try to be resilient, knowing that, hey, it's okay. This stuff happens. And I understand that you're still really upset. So for as far as the individuality, we've been pretty blessed where our kids have come into their own. And now I think that they need to be separate from each other for a little while. But it is really funny when my daughter will be somewhere or my son will be, and the other one will be asking, when are they going to be home? And I'll ask, do you miss them? Yeah. So they still have that want to be around each other to a bit, which I think is very endearing. But other than that, they've always been pretty good with having their own space and being independent.
As a parent of twins, what advice would you give to expectant parents awaiting the arrival of multiples, and what kind of support might they want to have in place before their babies arrive?
Whew, we'll go in knowing expectation versus reality. So we have all these expectations of how it's going to go, and we need to understand that's not going to be the reality. So give yourself grace if stuff doesn't go perfect, just like a birthing plan. We need to have backups and figure out what else can we do in these situations. So I think having your book is a great thing to prepare them with having different conversations, especially when it comes to family and friends, as far as how much help do you want with people? Do you need help? Do you want them to stay away for 2 weeks? And really formulating that plan as a family and not being afraid to ask for help. I think we try to wear this badge of honor of busyness. And we don't need to do that. We just need to slow down and rest, especially after you have any amount of babies, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. We really need to give ourselves that time to rest and really heal our bodies and not really rush into things. And then don't be afraid to ask for what you need. I will say the absolute best gift we got after we had our kids is my sister brought down a basket full of goodies and there were paper plates in there. And that was amazing. I don't have to do dishes on top of everything else because you're so overwhelmed when you bring babies home, especially if there's multiples. But you're going to find your rhythm. And then the babies are going to say, you know what, we're done with this one. We're going to switch to a new one. And then you have to adapt to a new one. So just make sure you're taking care of yourself and asking for what you need.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Angie, for being here. Can you share how people can get in touch with you and find out more about the work that you're doing?
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. I don't get to talk about my personal baby experience, so this was super fun. And then if people are interested, they can go find me at theparenttoolbox.info. There you can find out about what I do. You can sign up for different freebies I have on there. And you can follow me on social media at The Parent Toolbox or go listen to my podcast, Mom Essentials.
Thank you so much for being here, Angie. It's great talking to you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for listening to the Prepared for Parenthood podcast today. I hope you found this episode educational, informational, and conversational, and that you'll join me again for another episode soon. If you enjoyed listening to today's podcast, I'd very much appreciate if you would rate, review, and subscribe. If you're interested in more information related to today's podcast, or are looking for parent coaching or courses, you can find my information in the show notes or online at preparedforparenthood.com.